So very good evening everyone, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. Today is 10th November 2025 and today we have some very important topics from different newspapers. So one by one we'll be discussing all these important topics. So these are the list of topics that we are going to discuss: India's nutritional transformation, climate change impact on soil organic carbon in India, and anti-polygamy bill that is going to be tabled in Assam State Legislative Assembly this month. So these are the topics, and let's discuss the first very important topic, which is nutritional security in India. Right, so let's understand India's nutritional transformation, and this is very important from the syllabus point of view, General Studies paper 1 and also General Studies paper 2 as well. So you can also go through the syllabus and there is a possibility of asking mains question from this particular topic, and this has been given in the Hindu newspaper. So let's understand India's nutritional transformation. Now it is being said that India has been focusing on nutritional transformation, right? So in fact, for any country, nutritional security is very important along with the food security. Now when you are ensuring food security, you should also be able to ensure nutritional security as well. Otherwise it leads to a problem like hidden hunger. However, how India has been ensuring nutritional security? Through promotion of functional foods and smart proteins. So going into this, we'll understand what are these functional foods and smart proteins, but India has been trying to promote the nutritional transformation through functional foods and smart proteins. Now in fact, this will help India counter the malnutrition, hidden hunger, and over a period of time India will also be able to build sustainable and protein rich systems as well. Now if you look at the data about India's malnutrition, now in fact India is the country with the largest number of malnourished children, and India is also a country which has been suffering with the hidden hunger problem as well. So this is primarily because of a nutritious deficiency in food. However, how India is planning to counter this? Through promotion of functional foods and the smart proteins. However, so let's try and understand what are the smart food proteins and functional foods. Now in fact, when I say functional foods, these functional foods are actually enriched with nutrients. So they actually have all sufficient nutrients, and that will help counter malnutrition among the different categories of people, and in fact it will promote health or prevent diseases as well, because the functional foods are actually enriched with all essential nutrients. Now when food is enriched with all essential nutrients, it will help deal with the healthcare, and it will also prevent the diseases which are being developed primarily because of lack of nutrition. Now in fact, the examples of these functional foods including vitamin rich rice and iron fortified pearl millet and omega-3 fortified milk. So these are all the examples of functional foods. Now in fact, in India, through public distribution system also, the biofortified food, so it is going to be distributed among the people, so that will also help deal with the problem of malnutrition. So therefore, this is the example of functional foods. I hope you have understood what are the functional foods. Now let's understand the smart proteins as well. Now in fact, these foods, so whatever smart proteins, functional foods, they're being developed using cutting edge technologies. So one such technology is the biotechnology. So biotechnology will also be used for developing smart proteins and functional foods. Now in fact, the cutting edge technologies also include nutrigenomics and biofortification, bioprocessing, and even 3D food printing. So these are all new and emerging technologies, and through these technologies we can produce functional foods and smart proteins as well. And both smart proteins and functional foods will help us counter the existing food deficiency, nutritious deficiency, malnutrition, hidden hunger, all those problems. Right, so overall purpose of these technologies is to enhance the nutritional value of the existing available food. Right, so whatever food that we have been consuming daily, so that particular food should be enriched with nutrition. So that's how it will help us counter the malnutrition. Now on the other hand, if we talk about the smart proteins, so we have just understood the functional foods, but we should also understand the smart proteins as well. Now, in fact, the smart proteins actually represent the transformative shift. So the transformative shift on how proteins are sourced and produced. Right? So in fact, food which is enriched with proteins, and in fact how it is being sourced and how it is being produced, so all those things depends on the smart proteins. Now, in fact, they are being developed through biotechnology. So biotechnology is also a very important technological intervention to produce these smart proteins, and this will help us reduce our dependence on conventional livestock based production. Now, what is the problem? What is the challenge with the conventional livestock based production? So very often, so they result in antimicrobial resistance among the people, antimicrobial resistance, along with that new diseases as well. But if we have focused on smart proteins, that will reduce our dependence on conventional livestock based production as well. Now, in fact, smart proteins can be produced from different sources, right? They can be sourced from different methods. For example, plant-based smart proteins. So the plant-based smart proteins are sourced from legumes and cereals to mimic the meat and dairy. You not just depend on conventional livestock based production to source proteins. Rather, you can also get the plant-based proteins. And the plant-based proteins are also one category of smart proteins. Secondly, fermentation derived proteins. So this is also the second method of smart proteins. And in fact, the fermentation driven proteins, so they are produced using the microbial systems. So this is how you can actually produce smart proteins. And in fact, the cultivated meat as well. And this cultivated meat grown directly from animal cells in bioreactors without any slaughter. Right? So conventional livestock, generally they go through slaughter. But with respect to cultivated meat, there is no need for such a slaughter. So therefore, these are all three different types of the sources of smart proteins. Right? So why we have been discussing smart proteins and functional foods? Because India has been focusing on smart proteins and functional foods, and that will help address the malnutrition problem which is existing in India. That is the main reason, right? So therefore, it requires technology, it requires innovation, it also requires new and emerging technologies that we have just understood. So therefore, these innovations, so they essentially aimed at creating sustainable, ethical and climate resilient protein alternatives. Now, why we are saying climate resilient protein alternatives? Because if you look at the smart proteins are sourced from plant-based proteins, not from the livestock-based production. So that's why it is being said that a climate resilient protein alternative, and it is also a sustainable protein alternative, because we have dependent on the technologies. So through technologies we can produce functional foods and even the smart proteins as well, and that will help us address the existing malnutrition problem, nutritious deficiency among India's population. Right? So you can also go through some data with respect to the functional foods and smart proteins. Now, why there is a need for nutritional transformation in India? So this is the main question. Okay, so India has been focusing on functional foods and even smart proteins. So they will result in nutritional transformation in India. Why as a country should focus on nutritional transformation? Now, one thing that we should understand, as I've already told you, that India is a country with a large number of people who have been facing the problem of malnutrition. And in fact, more than half of Indian women are anemic. So therefore, in this context, the nutritional transformation is very important, because the nutritional transformation will guide and shape India's future, right? In terms of health, in terms of education, better learning outcomes, economic growth, everything can be decided by the nutritional transformation. And that's why nutritional transformation for a country like India is very important. Now, in fact, if you look at the nutritional imbalance in India, it is stark in nature. There are a lot of differences that you could easily identify. For example, India is the world's largest food producer, and this is very well known fact, We all knew about that, right? So India is the world's largest producer of food. However, over one third of Indian children remain stunted. Foods, wasting, stunting, malnutrition, hidden hunger. So despite the largest food producer in the world, you can imagine that one third of India's children still stunted. Now there is a micronutrient deficiency among the Indian population as well, and this is widespread in nature, right? So you can never see a micronutrient deficiency in any other country like it is prevalent in India. And apart from that, we should also talk about the calorie intake. So in India, the calorie intake is not up to the levels. So therefore, there is a need to improve calorie intake by the people as well. And in fact, the protein deficiency is clearly visible among India's population, and that's why it is leading to the nutrition deficiency among the people. Right? So if you look at the rural areas and remote areas where tribal populations have been living, so this malnutrition is clearly visible. They're not getting adequate nutritious food. Now, in fact, in India, we all knew that a middle class is the major class of people. Now, this middle class has also been expanding. Their incomes have been expanding. Their life style has been changing. Their food habits have been changing. Right, so in this context, they are increasingly seek a food that is not only filling but also nourishing. They're looking at the food which is not just filling their stomachs, but the food should also have some protein, minerals. So that will help, counter the malnutrition. So that's what India's middle class have been looking for, and that's how we can actually fight malnutrition. We can actually fight anemia. However, this actually demands a transition from the current focus. So not just focus on the calorie intake, there is a need to focus on adequate nutritious food. We need to take adequate protein along with the food, not just the calorie intake. So therefore, the key focus should be on nutrient sufficiency. Right? So whatever food that you have been consuming, the food should have adequate nutrition. Now, in fact, the transformation is important from the India's point of view. We have been discussing why this nutritional transformation is needed in India. It is needed and it is important to ensure that India's food production systems, they remain sustainable and climate conscious. So they have to be climate conscious and also sustainable in nature. Now, we don't depend on conventional livestock for our food. And at the same time, we dependent on pulses, cereals. So on the one hand, they increases the incomes of the farmers, poor farmers, and at the same time, they also provide adequate nutrition for the people. And in fact, these crops are also climate resilient in nature. So therefore, don't you think that it is a sustainable and a climate conscious food choice that people have been making and government has been promoting? And in fact, if you look at the traditional livestock farming, now in fact the traditional livestock farming, one of the major problem with this traditional livestock farming is a greenhouse gas emissions. Right? So they actually generate a huge amount of greenhouse gas emissions, and that further contributes to global warming and climate change. So India, as a responsible country, we also have a certain climate commitments. Now it is very important for us to meet those climate commitments. But at the same time, if we continuously dependent on traditional livestock farming, they generate a huge amount of greenhouse gases, and at the same time, because of increased antimicrobial resistance, because they use antibiotics at a higher scale. So this is also another major problem. So therefore, the solution here is foundational, the functional foods and smart proteins. So therefore, they actually provide scalable, sustainable and health-oriented solutions to India's dual challenge of malnutrition and environmental sustainability. Now, in fact, this is the dual challenge that India has been facing. On the one hand, we have been facing malnutrition. 1/3 of India's children still are malnutritious, they are stunted, and at the same time, environmental sustainability was also another challenge. So therefore, we could actually balance both through functional foods and also the smart proteins, and that's why this nutritional transformation is needed and important for a country like India. So let's understand India's progress in functional foods and smart proteins so far. So what type of a progress that we have achieved so far? Now, in fact, in India, it is being said that both functional foods and smart protein ecosystem. So this has been expanding at a rapid scale. Because if you look at the data, and this data has been revealing us important insights. So as of 2023, India had more than 70 startups, and these 70 startups have been offering over 370 alternative protein products. They are including plant-based meat, eggs, dairy substitutes. So they have been offering all those things, and in the coming years also there is a rapid growth of functional food and a smart protein based products, right? So apart from that, the challenges still remain. So that is another major problem, right? So despite there are a lot of startups, the challenges still remain, because as of now India lacks a clear regulatory framework, right? So there is a need for the clear regulatory framework. So this regulatory framework can actually set up a regulatory environment, and that's very important for a country like India with a huge market base, and at the same time a large number of people still who have been facing the problem of malnutrition. However, the food regulator in India is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, has yet to establish a definitive guidelines for a safety evaluation, right? So it has to establish proper guidelines. And additionally, large scale fermentation and biomanufacturing infrastructure, they still remain underdeveloped. So therefore, it is very, very important that if we wanted to achieve progress in the domain of functional foods and smart proteins, so we need to look at the existing challenges, and we should also come up with appropriate solutions to overcome the existing challenges. Now, in this context, what should be the way forward? So we should also talk about the way forward as well. For example, as we have discussed that India is a country with a huge population, largest population in the world, and apart from that, India is the largest food producer, and in fact India is also a country with a large number of children who are stunted. So don't you think that it is stark, it is contrasting with one another? So therefore, despite there is an existing potential for both functional foods and smart proteins, so there's a huge potential and no doubt about that, because we have a technology, we have the private startups, and we also have the government support, and we also have the large amount of food production base and consumer base as well. So therefore we can safely say that there's a huge potential for this. However, India needs a cohesive national framework. There is a need for a cohesive national framework, and this cohesive national framework both regulate and facilitate the promotion and development of an ecosystem which centers around the functional foods and smart proteins. So this is very, very important. And then we'll have to understand the key steps that have to be taken. Now, if you talk about the key steps that have to be taken, developing regulatory clarity under the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India is very important with respect to the safety, labeling and certification of the functional foods and also smart proteins, so that the consumers would be adequately aware about what is this, what is a functional food, what is a smart protein. The consumers would be adequately aware about this. And in fact, also understand that there is a need for large scale public private partnership in this space, right? So it could build fermentation and even the biomanufacturing infrastructure as well, because that will help form a strong foundation for both functional foods and smart proteins. However, supporting farmer inclusion and skill development, because understand that the major problem is nutrition deficiency, major problem is malnutrition, stunting and wasting of children, anemia. Now, in fact, climate change has been changing the cropping patterns. The farmers have been shifting towards the climate resilient crops. Pulses and cereals are climate resilient crops, and along with being a climate resilient crop, they are also a very important source of nutrition for the people. So therefore, on the one way, it is climate resilient. On the other hand, they also increases the incomes of the farmers, right? So apart from that, they also provide nutritious food for the people as well. So therefore, this has to be another area that has to be worked upon, right? So there is a need for coordination from different departments, and apart from that, different stakeholders, different agencies, which is very important. And promotion of consumer awareness, which is also a very important aspect that everyone should focus on, because a consumer awareness is one thing that once consumers are adequately aware about the functional foods, smart proteins, food, which actually provides them more protein and higher nutritious value, then it will easily it will help the consumers, it will help the people fight the malnutrition problem, right? So therefore, it is also very important to overcome the skepticism that people have with respect to lab made food. Now imagine meat which is lab made, not sourced from the conventional livestock. So people generally have some skepticism about this lab made food. So therefore, focus should be on consumer awareness about these lab made foods, that also includes functional foods and smart proteins, through a transparent communication and education, which is also very important. So this is the way forward, and this is how we can actually deal with the malnutrition problem in India through functional foods and smart proteins. So I hope you have understood this topic, and let's jump into another very important topic, which is talking about the climate change and imbalanced fertilizer use. And in fact, they are affecting the soil organic carbon in India. Now, in fact, the soil organic carbon is very, very important to increase agricultural productivity. And increased agricultural productivity means a better profitability for the farmers, remunerative prices for the farmers. Right, so it will also help them double the farmers' income and also alleviation of the rural poverty as well. However, the problem is climate change and excessive usage of the fertilizer, and they are reducing the existing soil organic carbon. That's the main problem here, and this topic has been given in the Hindu newspaper, and from the syllabus point of view for the mains examination, this is very, very important from General Studies paper 3, because agriculture every year a good number of questions are being asked from agriculture portion. Now let's understand what exactly is soil organic carbon, and then we'll proceed. Now in fact, if we talk about the soil organic carbon, first of all, we have to understand about a study. That study has been conducted by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research. Now, in fact, this is a comprehensive study, because the study has been conducted from 2017 to 2023, and that's why this is a comprehensive study by the Indian Council of Agriculture Research. And in fact, the study has also been coordinated by another institution, which is Indian Institute of Soil Science, Bhopal. Now, this comprehensive study has been highlighting serious degradation of soil organic carbon in India's agriculture soils. Now, what is the reason for a serious decline in soil organic carbon in India's agriculture soils? There are two prime reasons which are highlighted. So the first reason is climate change, and the second reason is imbalanced fertilizer application to the agriculture field. So these are the two major reasons for the decreasing soil organic carbon. However, this study has covered 2,54,236 soil samples across the country from 620 districts and 29 states. And in fact, it has also been recently published in International Journal on Land Degradation and Development. Now, in fact, the organic carbon, soil organic carbon. So you can also go through the importance of soil organic carbon, why it is important. But let's understand the key findings of Indian Council of Agriculture Research comprehensive study on the arable soils in India. Now, in fact, the soil organic carbon and soil health. So what important findings that they have made? Now, in fact, soil organic carbon is considered as foundation of a soil chemistry. So remember, I've already told you that the soil organic carbon plays a very important role in the health of the crop, increasing productivity in agriculture, right? So therefore, it plays a very, very important role in soil fertility and productivity of the crop. Secondly, the study has been conducted by Indian Council of Agriculture Research. So it establishes that the low organic carbon in the Indian soils, Indian agricultural soils, leads to a higher micronutrient deficiency among the soils, right? So imagine that if there is an agriculture land, in that agriculture land, so there is a micronutrient deficiency. Now it leads to a loss of soil fertility, it leads to a less agricultural productivity. However, the Indian Council of Agriculture Research has identified the major reason for the same is climate change and imbalanced fertilizer usage by the farmers in India. Because in India, farmers use excessive amounts of fertilizer to increase crop productivity. So there is no scientific criteria on the part of the farmers at the local level, but they use fertilizers in an unscientific manner. And apart from that, climate change is also another major factor which has been leading to the declining soil organic carbon, and that has been resulting in loss of fertility of the soils. However, let's understand the influence of climate and geography in the loss of soil organic carbon. Now, in fact, the soil organic carbon in any area, it is positively correlated with the elevation of the agriculture field. Because if the agriculture land is located in a higher altitude, hilly areas, so it actually shows a higher organic carbon content. But in fact, the soil organic carbon is negatively correlated with the temperature. So if there is a higher temperature, then there will be a lower soil organic carbon. But because of climate change, what has been happening? With climate change, temperatures have been increasing. So increasing temperature means declining soil organic carbon, declining fertility, declining agricultural productivity. Now, in fact, rainfall, temperature and elevation are the three primary natural determinants of soil organic carbon's concentration in the agricultural fields. However, from this, it is very clear that imbalanced fertilizer application, climate change are the major factors which have been leading to the decline in soil organic carbon in India's agricultural soils. Now let's understand another factor which has been contributing to the declining soil organic carbon. Now one is the role of cropping systems, right? Because excessive application of fertilizer has also been contributing for this, has also been contributing for the decline of soil organic carbon. Now, in fact, there are some crops such as rice-based and pulse-based systems. So they actually retain higher soil organic carbon due to the microbial activity, and this microbial activity is further enhanced by the irrigation. But there are some other crops, for example, wheat and coarse grain systems. They actually show lower soil organic carbon accumulation in the soils. And in fact, the fertilizer practices, as I've already told you, the unscientific application of fertilizer is prevalent in India. So therefore, imbalanced usage of urea, phosphorus, especially in states like Haryana, Punjab, Western UP. So this has actually led to the decline in the soil organic carbon. We all knew that in these places that I have just discussed, Haryana, Punjab, Western UP, intensive agriculture is being practiced. Excessive amounts of fertilizer is applied to the agriculture land. However, there are other areas, for example, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, UP. Now, in these areas, the fertilizer application is actually balanced. They've practiced balanced fertilizer application. So since they are practicing scientific and balanced fertilizer application, so it will not have a negative effect on the soil organic carbon. So therefore, in these areas where there is a balanced fertilizer application, you can clearly observe a healthy soil organic carbon compared to the places like Haryana, Punjab and Western UP. So we should also understand the impact of climate change on the soil organic carbon. Now, in fact, the soil organic carbon, it actually shows negative correlation with the rising temperatures. We have just understood that with increasing temperatures, so it will lead to the declining soil organic carbon, and rainfall variations have a minimal effect on this. Right? So elevation also affect So higher elevation means higher soil organic carbon, but higher temperature means so lower soil organic carbon. So climate change has been leading to the increasing global temperatures. However, declining soil organic carbon, so it reduces the soil heat absorption and it also increases the surface heat reflection. So all these factors aggravating the climate change greenhouse gas effects. Right? So therefore, the soil organic carbon degradation is directly linked to the climate change acceleration and even the carbon cycle imbalances because of the unscientific and imbalanced fertilizer application to the fields. So let's understand the policy implications and the recommendations. So this is also a very important aspect that we have to focus on. Now, in fact, promoting organic carbon sequestration is a very important aspect that has to be focused upon. So for that to take place, so we need to identify soils with soil organic carbon which is less than 0.25% and then promote organic carbon enrichment through methods like improved cropping systems and irrigation facilities. Now, irrigation facilities have to be provided. Irrigation here should be scientific irrigation, and improved cropping systems like rice can be cultivated, pulses can be cultivated, so that they will help restore the soil organic carbon. Secondly, incentivizing the carbon credit mechanisms is also very important. For example, if farmers have been investing in increasing the soil organic carbon, and if the government has been incentivizing the soil organic carbon, so in that case more and more farmers will come forward and they would also invest in the soil organic carbon. And then the climate smart crop management. For example, develop region specific crop management practices to mitigate temperature effects and also enhance the soil organic carbon resilience as well. So these are some recommendations that have to be brought in, right? So next, a very important topic, anti-polygamy bill that will be introduced in Assam State Legislative Assembly, and this has been given in the Indian Express newspaper, and from the syllabus point of view this is very important for Gender Studies paper 1 and Gender Studies paper 2 as well. So let's understand what is this anti-polygamy bill and why it is very important, right? So firstly, so as I've already told you that Assam is going to introduce the anti-polygamy bill, right? So Assam cabinet, which is led by Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma, has approved Assam Prohibition of Polygamy Bill 2025. Right? So if anybody practices polygamy, so what is polygamy? Polygamy actually means having more than one wife or having more than two wives, so which is known as polygamy, right? So if anybody practices polygamy as per the Prohibition of Polygamy Bill 2025, it may lead to 7 years of imprisonment for the offenders. Now this bill aims to promote gender justice, social equality, right? So in a society, it is important to protect women's rights. So women should not be exploited. So therefore, it aims to promote gender justice and social equality with limited exceptions, much like how, for example, there are certain areas which are considered as the 6th schedule areas. So there is an exception for the 6th schedule areas provided under this Prohibition of Polygamy Bill of 2025. And in fact, prohibition of polygamy is very important from the point of view of Article 44, because Article 44 promotes uniform civil code. And in fact, Assam is also a state which has been planning to bring a uniform civil code, like on the lines of Uttarakhand and Goa, and Supreme Court several times also favored bringing a uniform civil code. However, prohibition of polygamy will help protect women's rights, will help in further strengthening women's rights as well, right? So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much. So please subscribe our YouTube channel and also hit like. Thank you so much.